Now, Liverpool are in the midst of a quadruple push, but it'd be fair to say that the fans' minds aren't always on that pursuit of trophies, and that is, of course, because they know at the end of this season that Jurgen Klopp is going to depart as Liverpool manager, and therefore a new manager is going to need to be sought. Now, of course, the news has sunk in now, that fans have had a bit of time to digest it, but I thought I haven't really sort of nailed my colours to the mast in terms of what I think Liverpool should do next. So while it's been a quiet couple of weeks and obviously Liverpool not having midweek fixtures, I've done a bit of a dig into who I think it should be and looked at the numbers and really researched who I think should be the outstanding candidate for this job. And it'll come as no surprise really that the man I've settled on in the early running and who I really think should be the next man in line is former Liverpool midfielder Xabi Alonso. Now, I'll start out with the basics of his job he's done at Bayer Leverkusen so far. Just really outstanding. And obviously he took over a side that last season in October, I believe he was appointed, and he took over a side that was in the bottom three of the Bundesliga and completely transformed their fortunes. He had a slow start in terms of a few dodgy results at first, but then a bit of time on the training field and things really started to turn out well really for Leverkusen. They ended up finishing that season 6th in the Bundesliga and qualifying for the Europa League. So, as I say, a remarkable turnaround from having been in the bottom 3 when Alonso took over. And of course, things have just kept getting better and better. They're now 5 points clear in the Bundesliga title race now, and 31 games unbeaten. If they make it to 32, they'll equal a record for a German team set by Bayern Munich previously of 32 games unbeaten. And there's every opportunity they've got here to go on and break that record and break it well, because they've just faced Bayern Munich and absolutely taken them apart. A 3-0 victory in the end, and they were so convincing in that, so dominant. There's a good reason basically why everyone makes them now massive favourites to go on and win the Bundesliga title. It's not just that they've got that 5-point gap, because I suppose that's quite a narrow gap, but it's that they genuinely look like the best team in the Bundesliga. And there's huge significance to that as well, because it's not just like he's taken over a sleeping giant who should be in that position and are now finally living up to the potential. I mean, Bayer Leverkusen are a team who have never won the Bundesliga title. Just let that sink in. He's taken a side who have never been in this sort of heights, and he's inspiring them to, well, he'll hope to go on and lift the Bundesliga title for the first time. 5 times in the history they've been runners-up in the competition. So, they've got it in them to mess things up. I mean, the nearest equivalent, I suppose, in English football is, I know it's an unfair moniker, I would say, but people say about Spursy in terms of it's inbuilt in the club that they will fail at the final hurdle or won't get over the line. But you look at this Leverkusen side; they look incredibly convincing, and they've got a nickname in Germany, Neverkusen, as in the team that will never get over the line. And I wondered the ability that Alonso's shown, not just in terms of turning things around on the pitch, but in terms of the mentality that seems to be there, because they were so convincing against Bayern. They looked like they believed that they should be the best team in the Bundesliga, and as I say, they've got that 5-point cushion now and look like massive favourites to go and win it. And again, there's further significance to that, not just in terms of the mental side of things, but in terms of that overachievement that we're seeing there. So, Bayern's wage bill is far higher than Leverkusen's. It absolutely dwarfs it. I mean, in fact, if you look at the Bundesliga wage bills, you've got Leverkusen is around the 4th biggest according to most estimates. Obviously, you've got Bayern leading the way, then Dortmund, then Red Bull Leipzig, and then it's Bayer Leverkusen. And I think it's around 4 times bigger Bayern's than Leverkusen, which again just shows you the degree of overachievement there. And I think when Liverpool are looking for the next manager, a manager who can overachieve is something that they need to look for. It's that's not to say that Liverpool are a small club, but they know in the Premier League you've got Manchester City are always massive spenders, huge wage bill. Manchester United are always going to have a huge wage bill as well, definitely bigger than Liverpool's. And of course, Manchester United actually seem to be sorting things out now in terms of pursuing Dan Ashworth and sorting out the football side of their operations. And if they do that, we know with their spending power that they're going to be really dangerous. So from Liverpool's point of view, it's all about finding a manager who can, inspire that sort of overachievement. It was a big driving factor for when they appointed Jurgen Klopp. They looked at the fact that relative to his budget and the fact that he was beating Bayern Munich to Bundesliga titles, that showed that he was a good manager. And Also, a massive part of appointing Klopp as well. It wasn't just the fact that he'd won the Bundesliga title twice and got to a Champions League final. There was more to it than that. Those are the surface elements which I've touched on with Alonso. And again, if he goes and wins the Bundesliga title ahead of Bayern Munich, it's a huge box ticked, isn't it? But Liverpool, we know they're very much data driven when they look at the managers. I mean, there's a story about Ian Graham who headed up the data operations at Liverpool, talking to Jurgen Klopp when he first came to Liverpool and saying to him, look, I saw your last season at Dortmund. You may remember that Dortmund had a bit of a disastrous last season under Klopp and a terrible start, and eventually came up to finish 7th. But Ian Graham said to Klopp, look, I looked at the numbers behind that season, and to be honest, it was absolutely crazy that you finished 7th. You should have been much higher. The underlying numbers all suggested that you were a team that was much better than that, a team that should have been around the top 4, and the fact that you had that disastrous start was one of the unluckiest things we've seen when we analysed the numbers. So Liverpool, they don't just look at that surface level stuff, as I say, they look in the underlying numbers, and that's what I've done as well here to try and see whether Alonso is the right man for this job. And I think that the numbers paint a really, really good picture, and for that reason I think that Alonso will show up well, disregarding all the surface level stuff and the fact that he's got the Liverpool ties. I think Xabi Alonso, when the data team at Liverpool look into who should be the next manager, he will show up massively well. And I'll go into some of the numbers now, and again, I'm going to start with more sort of general numbers and talk about the stuff that just on the surface makes Bayer Leverkusen stand out. And I will bring up some graphics from time to time while I'm talking, just to give you an illustration. I won't just throw numbers at you. It's just to give you an idea of what's going on and why Leverkusen is so impressive. So, like I say, start with a really surface level one. And a lot of the data I've looked into is basically from the top 5 European leagues. So you want to compare across those, don't you? Because those are the leagues that Liverpool are going to pick a manager from. There's no doubt about that. They want someone who's done it at the highest level in European football, and so the top 5 European leagues are really where you want to look at the numbers. And the first thing I looked at really was points per match across the top 5 European leagues at the moment, and incredibly, Leverkusen are top of that at the moment. So they've got 2.62 points per match, so that puts them ahead of Inter, Real Madrid, of course Bayern, who we know trail them in the Bundesliga title race, and PSG are in there in 5th, which again, PSG, quite impressive that Leverkusen are picking up more points than them per game, because obviously you think of the advantages that PSG have built in Ligue 1. Leverkusen have none of that. The 4th highest wage bill in the Bundesliga, so and to be picking up so many more points per match than some of these huge teams who've got huge wage bills is hugely impressive. I've also got in the numbers here is that Manchester City is 7th in that list, and Liverpool 8th with 2.26 and 2.25 points per match at the moment. Just to give you sort of an idea about where how they compare to Liverpool, I think it's good to get that idea. And obviously Manchester City, who you'd say are the dominant team in the Premier League, so I think it's kind of good to get that look at things as well. So points per match, absolutely flying. The best team in Europe by that measure. But of course, that is sort of winning games is it's a surface level thing, as I'd say. I think obviously sometimes teams can get on lucky runs, can't they? So it's better to go deeper than that. But it's a very good start when you're looking into how Alonso's doing at Leverkusen, to look that he's picking up more points per match than any of those sort of teams in the top 5 European leagues. But I go a little bit deeper now, and still is more general stat, but a little bit on the deeper side of things, and it's the expected goal difference generated per 90. So that's your expected goals for against your expected goals against, and that gives you that figure of an expected goals figure. And it's per 90, so how well you're doing in matches, how dominant you are in matches. And again, this is a little bit of a deeper statistic, but I think shows that Leverkusen, on the surface of things, are a very, very good side. So they're in 4th place at the moment now. It's like behind Bayern Munich, who lead the way in that statistic with 1.79. Leverkusen have got 1.18 on that number, but which shows you that I think Bayern, the power they've got. I think expected goal difference sometimes can be dominated by the fact that Bayern will have a lot more options off the bench, and if they're winning a game handily, they can go on and win it 6 or 7-0. Leverkusen maybe don't have that amount of options to really boost their expected goal difference in that way, but I think it is still a really good indicator that the underlying numbers show that this is a good team in attack and in defence. And I'm going to, in fact, go a little bit deeper into that and look at that. And I think I'm going to start with the defensive side of things. And and see how Leverkusen are operating on that front, a little bit deeper on that side of things. So I'll start out with expected goals against. So obviously with goals against per 90, maybe you're getting a lot of goalkeeper saves, or you're getting a bit lucky with teams missing high quality chances against you. But again, Leverkusen show up really, really well in this. Now, the 6th out of all the teams in Europe's top 5 leagues for expected goals against, with 18.9. Now, this is not a per 90 stat, so it's a little bit skew-whiff really. It's not actually the best measure because some teams have played more than others, but I still think the fact that Leverkusen are up that high in terms of expected goals against, and they limited it to 18.9 so far this season, I think is really impressive, particularly when you've got, you know, the likes of Arsenal are in there in third, is 17.7. Inter, again, a really good defensive team with 18.9, same as Leverkusen. And Liverpool, again, as I say, it's not a perfect measure because it's not per 90, but it's, you know, Liverpool have conceded 29.4 expected goals against this season. So I think it shows you that, you know, Liverpool have learned a little bit more open. Leverkusen maybe a slightly more balanced side. So that is a really interesting measure, and shows you again how good Alonso is at coaching defence. And one more statistic from the defensive side of things I want to talk about is that the 4th in Europe's top 5 leagues for clean sheets per 90, 0.52 there. Again, Inter doing really well in that statistic, 0.61, and they're up in second. But I think, and you've got Liverpool are down in 29th with 0.33, not always been perfect in defence, I suppose. But again, it just shows you, you know, Xabi Alonso really knows how to keep things tight. Now, occasionally you get managers who do that and they can coach a defence, they can keep things tight, but it comes at the expense then of being fluent in attack and scoring goals. And obviously Liverpool, they need someone who's good at doing both things. Jurgen Klopp's consistently proved that over the seasons, that he can coach a defence, yes, make Liverpool really hard to beat, but then they score goals and they've got attacking flair, and that, you know, being balanced in that way is how you win trophies. And you know, there's a good reason why Leverkusen are where they are in the Bundesliga and going well in all the other competitions, is that's because they have that balance. So I'm going to go into some attacking statistics for you now and look at goals for per 90. So again, they showed up well in goals against per 90, but Leverkusen right up there again with goals for per 90. They're second to Bayern Munich in terms of goals scored or goals per 90 minutes across this season so far, with 2.52. I just think that is just hugely impressive. And you look at the teams around them. Bayern Munich just ahead of them with 2.76. Manchester City just behind with 2.39. We know how good Pep Guardiola's side are in attack. And Liverpool, who've been prolific this season, so dangerous, way down in 11 with 2.13 goals per 90 so far this season. So again, it shows you this incredible balance he's got. The defence is really solid, but the attack is showing up as well. And again, okay, goals per 90, you could say, well, sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you get penalties, sometimes ball deflects in, quite fortunately, and you get on a little purple patch in terms of scoring. But again, I keep saying this, the underlying numbers suggest that this is sustainable, and this is something that's being coached in, because shots per 90, which is a really good indication. If you're generating a lot of shots, you're going to score a lot of goals. We always say this about Darwin Núñez, for example, and it works on an individual level, but also in terms of as a team. If you are shooting a lot, you are going to score goals. And in terms of Europe's top 5 leagues, Bayer Leverkusen are the third best in terms of generating shots per 90 minutes, and that's 17.48 they've done so far this season. Now, Liverpool's slightly ahead of them with 18.75. So again, we know Liverpool's attack being so good this season, they've really been blowing teams away and creating chances constantly. So, but Leverkusen right up there with them in terms of their ability to create. They've generated more chances more shots per 90 than Manchester City, even who've got 17. So again, these statistics all show an attack that's working. And I just want to finish off in terms of talking about the attack by touching on the fact that the non-penalty expected goals. So again, I mentioned that, okay, sometimes you get lucky with a run of penalties. I mean, I remember a couple of seasons ago, Manchester United teams would get about 15 penalties in one season. And that really, if you didn't factor that into their attacking numbers, made things look a lot better than they actually were in terms of the attacking picture. But non-penalty expected goals per 90 generated, again, Leverkusen showing up really well in this. The third out of Europe's top 5 leagues for that, 1.98 generated. Liverpool down in 5th with 1.92, which again, you know, Liverpool playing really well this season. I think that again shows you that Leverkusen's attack, it's something sustainable, it's something that's coming from the coach. And it's not just a fluke in terms of getting penalties. They are generating shots, they're generating opportunities, generating expected goals, and that is, again, just a really good indicator of a very good team in attack and in defence. And so all the numbers show up really, really well for them. Now, one final thing in terms of the deep dive of the numbers I want to talk about is that, okay, we see from these statistics that Leverkusen are a good side. They've got everything in the locker in attacking and defence. But one thing I want to touch on in terms of appointing a manager is the stylistic fit. Now, with Jurgen Klopp, we know that this team's built for a Jurgen Klopp style of football, and it's that gegenpress, as it's called, and trying to press high and create chances in that way. In fact, Jurgen Klopp says about pressing, doesn't he, that it's his number one playmaker, really the best playmaker he can have, and we know elements of his game, that defensive solidity that he likes at the back, that ability to win aerial duels because you're pressing from the front. He wants to win the ball aerially at the back and reset and start play from there. So I kind of looked into if there were stylistic differences, and maybe this is something that Liverpool will factor in. I think the fact that things are slightly different, maybe, I wouldn't say it counts against Alonso, because I'd say, look, Liverpool are going to go for the best manager they can get, and if that means a slight stylistic change, they're going to go for it. But I think it's still worth noting that there are going to be stylistic differences, and maybe if Alonso is the man they go for, that's going to take a little bit of time for the players to get used to, a little bit of coaching. Maybe they'll have a slow start to the season if he does come in, but it's something that I think is worth mentioning. So I'll talk about the fact, firstly, with the way that Leverkusen use the ball. So in terms of short passes attempted in top 5 European leagues, they are first out of every side. They're ahead of Manchester City, they're ahead of Barcelona, all these sides that you associate with that sort of short tiki-taka football. They are number one in all of Europe's top 5 leagues for short passes attempted. Now, interestingly, Liverpool are 15th for that figure. So I've got short passes attempted per 90 here for Leverkusen. They got 394.3 per 90 minutes. That's a lot of short passes. As I say, Manchester City in second with 345.2. Brighton a third with 391.1. Now, Roberto De Zerbi, I think worth talking about, because he's a manager who's been, suggested might be in the running for the Liverpool job. So interesting to see him up there for that. That gives you a real idea of how that Brighton really like to use the ball, like to be the dominant side. And as I say, Liverpool down in 15th for this statistic. So shows you there's a slight stylistic difference there. Liverpool like to dominate possession, but maybe less of those short passes. We don't see as much of that. And I think as you move through the types of passes, we actually do see this stylistic difference really, really kind of spelled out really, really clearly. Because when you go to medium range passes, Leverkusen, they were first for short range passes. They're down to 15th, and Liverpool up to 5th. Now again, that shows you a little bit more of the sort of counter-attacking style that Liverpool can occasionally like to play. Yes, they like to be dominant, but they can also, they can spring from corners. They can, if they win the ball in their defensive third, they can spring forward really fast. That was more seen in Jurgen Klopp's early time at Liverpool, but it's still a feature of Liverpool's play. They can counter, they can play quickly, and those medium range passes going a little bit longer than short range. So Liverpool are 5th for that, and Leverkusen 15th. So again, stylistic difference, and again, long passes, I think it's spelled out even better, really, in terms of, now long passes tends to be dominated by teams who, are more physical, will try and just get the ball up, hitting big diagonals and things like that. So you'll never really see the top teams in and amongst that. But I think it still says a lot that Liverpool are 32nd for that. So not quite as low down as you expect. Again, they like the spread of play, they like the longer passes, they like to change the angle of attack in that way. They're not always sort of cute passes around the box, are they, Liverpool? And they can counter-attack at pace. So again, I think that's why we see Liverpool kind of quite high up that for a team that is dominant in the way that they are. But Leverkusen are down in 95th for that statistic. So the preference for short passes is really, really pronounced in the profile of Xabi Alonso's team now. You can always say that managers can change from time to time, but I do think that's going to be a real feature of his management. And you think about the football that he played with Spain when he was in the Spanish national team, that it makes sense really that he's a manager who really likes that to control the game in that way and control it with possession. So I think that's a really sort of interesting sort of feature of his game that stylistically, if he did come, like I say, maybe that will take some time for Liverpool to settle into that style of play and get used to that. But it's a really, as I say, really interesting aspect of his management that we've seen so far. And actually, just one final thing I want to touch on stylistically as well is actually where Leverkusen are having the touches. Now, again, when you think about short passes, you could just think, okay, well, they're recycling the ball around the back, they're having easy possession, that's why they complete so many passes. But again, if you take a deeper look into the numbers, you don't actually kind of see that. So, for example, touches in the defensive third, Leverkusen are down in 89th, which again I think shows you they don't just want the ball amongst the centre half. They want to get it forward. They're not just keeping possession for possession's sake. And I think it's interesting to note that Brighton are first for touches in the defensive third. So again, that to me is it's not dangerous possession, is it? That's not what Brighton are having in those moments. They're possibly taking too many risks by having the ball in the defensive third, and if that doesn't come off, it's easily nicked, and then you've got an opportunity against it. And Liverpool in 23rd for that statistic. So it's interesting that Leverkusen don't like to have the ball, or seemingly from these numbers don't like to have the ball in defensive third. It's all about moving it up the pitch, and you can actually clearly see that as you move through the third. So get to the middle third, Leverkusen are the highest for touches in Europe's top 5 leagues in the middle third of the pitch, so they like to dominate that midfield third. Brighton are in 4th for that statistic, Liverpool in 5th, and then you move into the attacking third, and Leverkusen are 5th in Europe's top 5 leagues for touch-ins in the attacking third. So they like to have the ball in the middle third of the pitch or in the attacking third of the pitch. That's where they're having the possession, where they can be dangerous rather than the opposition dangerous to them. Brighton down in 11 for touches in the attacking third, and Liverpool are not too far away either. So I think that's kind of interesting that you're seeing really in this that Leverkusen are a side that they like those short passes, they like to dominate possession, but you can see they like to do it in dangerous areas as well. They're dominant in the areas of the pitch that are going to create goals as well. So again, maybe slight stylistic difference to Liverpool in that, and definitely a stylistic difference to Brighton, particularly with De Zerbi's name coming up so frequently. And I just think that's an interesting one to note, really, when you get into Xabi Alonso, that things maybe will be slightly different when he comes in, or if he comes in. I'm maybe getting ahead of myself there. And the way he's going to play is going to be slightly sort of strange for Liverpool fans to get used to, because they've had Jurgen Klopp for so long. But he's, all the numbers, as I say, show that he creates in maybe a different way to Jurgen Klopp, but balanced teams that can attack, they can defend, they can be dominant, and maybe they can win the Bundesliga title this season as well. Now, I'm just going to finish up with a couple of sort of general points about Xabi Alonso that is kind of no surprise to anyone, I suppose. Is that another huge aspect is this Liverpool connection, of course. Now, he was a Champions League winner at Liverpool, won the FA Cup as well, spent 5 years at the club, and always speaks so highly of it. And I think whoever comes in to succeed Jurgen Klopp, they've got an incredibly tough job on their hands. I think they're taking over a great squad in terms of a good mix of ages, an academy that keeps producing brilliant players, and there's so much to want about the job from that perspective. And a backroom setup that is so good at signing players as well. So a lot that will appeal from that element. But I also think you're stepping into the shoes of someone like Jurgen Klopp. That is tough. That is tough to take on that sort of mantle, and you've got a lot to sort of succeed to there, really, haven't you? It's a big job to take on in that sense. So I think that Liverpool connection, actually, from that perspective, will be so beneficial for Alonso. The fans will be immediately on side. Everyone loves Xabi, don't they? You talk to Liverpool fans, he's so admired in terms of not just what he did on the football pitch, but and that style of play and that classiness he brought, but the classiness he shows off the pitch. He's such a likeable person, and I think classy actually is the word you would use for him. So I think he's immediately onto a winner from that perspective as well, which, if it was De Zerbi, if it was Amorim, any of those names, they wouldn't really have that immediate buy-in, and they'd have to win over the fans. So I think that, as much as that's an intangible element, it's something that I think should come into your thinking when you're appointing the next Liverpool manager, is that you need someone who's going to be able to win fans over immediately, because they're succeeding one of the best Liverpool manager of the modern era, I would argue. So it's a big job to take on, and I think that Liverpool connection will really serve him well. And I just want to finish actually as well with a quote from 2018. This is Xabi Alonso when he was the Real Sociedad B team manager, talking about the prospect of maybe coming to Liverpool one day and managing. And when you think about, there's going to be competition out there for Alonso, I've no doubts about it. Will Real Madrid come in for him this summer? Will Bayern Munich be there? I'm sure every team in Europe who's got any ambition will want to appoint Alonso as the manager when this summer comes around. So Liverpool are going to have competition. But I go back to this quote from 2018 when he was asked about, would you want to come and coach at Anfield one day? And he says, yeah, for sure, I've dreamt of that. First I have to prove myself and prepare, which I think he's definitely done. If I decide somewhere along the way to take my chances as a manager, my link, my commitment and my passion with Liverpool is there. So I think that quote shows you that it's very much in his mindset to come and manage Liverpool one day. And maybe this summer, with Jurgen Klopp parting ways with the club after such a long time and so much success, maybe this is the perfect time to make this happen. As I say, I've outlined that I think Xabi Alonso is the perfect manager for Liverpool. I think he's the outstanding candidate for so many reasons. Do let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think it should be Alonso? Is there any other candidate that really stands out to you? What should Liverpool do if they couldn't get Alonso? Who should be the next cab off the rank, so to speak, in terms of that? Who should be the one they should look to? I'm really interested to hear your thoughts as always, and if you can drop me a like on this video, always appreciated. And if you don't subscribe, hope you enjoyed this video and it's enough to convince you to subscribe to join along, because loads going on with Liverpool at the moment, and for that reason I will see you guys very soon.